Welcome to the Black Paper. My name is Ndukwu Noha.
And I'm Cheta Wanze.
Right. So finally, Cheta, a topic that we have somehow kicked into the long grass since we started this podcast, but somehow almost every week it almost manages to rear its head in one form or the other. And
Before we
today,
start, disclaimer, you always manage to drag it in kicking and screaming.
um, so finally today we're going to talk about it.
We can't avoid it.
We can't
at this
avoid
point.
it. In the words of Wale Soyinka, our sister has gone mad again. So Cheta, what has happened yet again?
So the leader of the Conservative Party in the UK, Kemi Badenoch, Olukemi Badenoch, Olukemi Adegoke Badenoch, has declared that she is not Nigerian. She doesn't identify with a Nigerian identity. This is coming a couple of weeks after she made a faux pas in an interview with CNN, where she said that her children are not, just because she's a woman, her children are not Nigerian citizens, which is not true. And we talked about it briefly a couple of episodes ago. She wasn't accurate in that, and again, these things bring into question her preparedness for interviews, her preparedness for leadership, because it's a theme that has been repeating itself in PMQs, for example, where sometimes she says something and it becomes very clear very quickly that either her researchers are trying to sabotage her, or she just comes in unprepared. Because simple and short, to kick that out of the way, the Nigerian Constitution, what I prefer to call Decree 28 of 1998, because the Nigerian people did not sit down to agree to that constitution. The Decree 28 of 1990 in section 25 1C says, and I'm going to quote it word for word: every person born outside Nigeria, either of whose parents is a citizen of Nigeria, is a citizen of Nigeria by birth. Basically, what this means is that a Nigerian parent, once you are Nigerian, and this is ad infinitum. So there's a reason why, as an example, and this is not very analogous, but the English girl, Ashley Plunter, played for Nigeria and won the Women's African Cup of Nations last week. Now, how did she become Nigerian? Her grandfather moved to the UK. So again, it's not exactly analogous because her grandfather is a man. But that section is very clear. Whether it is a man, whether it is a woman, once you're a Nigerian and you have kids with a foreigner, your kids are Nigerians. And as a result, even Kemi's grandkids, when her children start reproducing, will be Nigerian because her own kids are Nigerian, whether she likes it or not. The only way you can renounce your Nigerian citizenship, the Nigerian citizenship is one of the hardest to renounce. It follows us like a bad smell anywhere we go, unless the president of Nigeria personally signs a document saying you are no longer Nigerian. As far as Nigeria is concerned, you're a citizen anywhere you go.
So you see, it has become the thing of about Kemi that she chats rubbish, and this is me because I realized initially when we were speaking, you were saying you were using nice words. She wasn't particularly correct.
I'm nice like that.
She made a four catcher. There's no universe in which you're nice like that. And then she made a faux pas.
My lawyers will be in touch.
See, anyone who knows anything about Kemi knows that she doesn't know the difference between a fork and a shovel. She just says whatever comes to her head without thinking. And I know you're going to say I'm saying this because I'm a labor counselor, but here's the thing.
No, I was this time because
The thing is,
you are on the same boat as so many Nigerians, and I have written probably 3 articles talking about Kemi, trying to explain her, and a lot of the pushback I get is from angry Nigerians who say, "Why are you defending rubbish?"
No, but Cheta, this is not about defending. I come at this from a different point of view. As I mentioned to someone, when she was voted in or picked as a conservative leader, I thought, oh, you know what, good on you. Actually, sent out a tweet saying, look, congrats. I know we may be from different parties. However, you've shown that this is possible. And but the thing is, if someone is looking at being a leader of the council, never mind the leader of the UK, if you're looking at being even a leader of the council, you are expected to have your facts right. You're
Yeah.
expected to not just jump at anything because you think it will either grab headlines or is a culture war, which is what she has always been stoking. She's like a curbside JD Vance. Now,
So
she started.
I
Wait,
think
hang
it's
on. She
important.
started this thing. Sorry, Chita. She started this
Yeah,
thing
go on.
with well, when she got elected, when Farage and the rest said, "Look, we're getting a lot of."
And there you are. So here is where Kemi's most fundamental issue is. She's trying to play red meets right wing politics, and I think she's aware. She she will definitely not admit this, but she's aware that a lot of the people who nominally would have supported her party are moving over to Farage's reform. She's trying to find a way to get them back,
Over eight
and she
thousand of them have left the party
she has
since she
hit
was
on
elected.
this she has hit on this brilliant idea, brilliance in her head, that throwing her ancestry under the bus will get them back. And something that we have said, I mean, pretty much from the first episode of this podcast when we talked about Keir Starmer's white paper. Um, you cannot you can't out Farage. You can't, and this is something that repeats itself pretty much all over the West. Whenever politicians who nominally should be centrists, should be in centrist parties, try to appeal to the right wing will always push further to the right. You can't go. So we now have this bizarre situation where, in trying to appeal to the right wing, in trying to sound more right wing than the nativist right wingers, Kemi is actually beginning to look very silly. And when you now add it to the lack of preparedness, the harebrained research, and all of that, it just makes her look very,
Yeah,
very
but
bad.
so do you know?
I
I still want to push back on that lack of preparedness because, again, for someone who has been called out over and over at PMQs for just not being prepared, to then go and sit at an international news desk and just boldly lie, it's we can't keep making an excuse for her that she's not prepared. One, you lie about not people not being your children not being able to be Nigerian citizens because you're a woman. What you see there is a calculated attempt to key into, again, going back to your point, the right wing sentiment of a group of people don't give women the rights. A group of people beats down on women. And then she just thinks to herself, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to go on here. I'm just going to lie about this. Then the next day,
I challenge that. I don't think that she said, "I'm going to go out here and lie about this."
oh,
I would say
she has a record.
I so her,
She
like I said earlier, her
mm,
record is off. Basically, so the things that I can accuse her of. Wait, on the quick, chill.
mm,
The things I can accuse her of. Number one, so for example, in February PM, in the PMQs, I think it was the second week of February, she questioned Keir Starmer about a court ruling concerning a Palestinian family,
mm.
using the Ukrainian resettlement scheme. Her question was wrong. And Stammer, it gave Stammer an open goal, which he promptly passed the ball into the net. Basically telling her that she had not done her homework. In January, there was something about the employment bill, which showed that she did not understand it. Again, Stammer, it was an open goal, and Stammer is not like Yakubu Ayegbeni. He simply passed the ball into the net. He joyfully, and he's a lawyer, so he joyfully dissected that particular statement. Another thing that I've noticed about her is she has ideas in her head, and she doesn't. And this repeats itself in PMQs again. PMQs for me is the ultimate record of her inability to do this
Of
work.
ineptitude.
Ineptitude. Yes, I was trying to be nice again. Like I said, I'm nice like that. So do you deny that? So she comes with an idea in her head, and then she sticks to it, no matter what people are saying. She doesn't listen to alternative arguments. Now, on the Nigerian constitution thing, I don't think that me or you will deny that the Nigerian constitution is mildly misogynistic. So,
Mm.
for example, those provisions that
Mildly.
I'm trying
My
again, I'm nice.
goodness, this
I'm nice like that.
your run of night. What's going on?
So I think we'll both agree that the Nigerian constitution is madly misogynistic. So because of that misogyny, misogyny, she took an idea, did not bother to research, and ran with it. So there are provisions. For example, if my daughter marries a foreigner, that foreigner doesn't get automatic Nigerian citizenship. He has to go and live in Nigeria for at least 15 years, and even then the president has to sign. Whereas if my son marries a foreign girl, she becomes a Nigerian citizen. Those imbalances,
Ah,
which we
you know what you've just said now? Perhaps, sorry, Cheta, this whole 15 years, is someone living in 50, perhaps that's what drove Kemi to want all migrants to stay in the UK for at least 15 years. Perhaps her husband has been trying to get uh,
again it's
Nigerian
possible. Again, it's
citizenship, and
possible, but
we all have to suffer
so
for it.
now we are getting somewhere. Essentially, she has ideas of the misogynistic nature of Nigerian law, of the Nigerian ground norm, and she has built on those ideas in her head and has not and didn't bother to seek advice as to what is true and what is not true. One. Number two, and this is where it frankly gets irritating, her bringing up Nigeria every time. It's frankly disgrace. There's no other language. So one of my arguments is that she's not much different from most Nigerians. Um, a sad truth that we have to admit is that Nigeria is not really a country that people are proud of. Um, at this point in time. So, I mean, there was an Afrobarometer survey that I referred to in my article on this particular incident, and that article was published in Nigerian media. I was comparing the nature of colonialism in India and the nature of colonialism in Nigeria, and why it has produced people who are not necessarily proud of Nigeria, while on the other hand, and you had the very clear contrast: Rishi Sunak and Kemi Badenoch. Afrobarometer did a survey a couple of years ago, and 90% of the respondents, Nigerians, so the survey of Nigerians, 90% of the respondents as in, were, to put it mildly, were unhappy with Nigeria. Only 6% of the respondents believe that Nigeria is on the right path. 24% of the respondents said that there is nothing to love about being Nigerian. Funny thing is, Pew Research did a similar survey in India, and about 70% of Indians were like, their country is on the right path, is getting stronger on the global stage, and 79% hold a favorable view of the Prime Minister Modi. So, Kemi Badenoch is the extreme manifestation of the relative lack of love. I would prefer to say of the lack of ownership that Nigerians feel about Nigeria. And she's also allowing her trauma in places like FGC Shagamu.
So,
I mean,
so
I went to a boarding school in Nigeria, so I can tell you some traumatic experiences. But she's allowing that trauma, she's allowing some of the bad experiences, which all of us have. Everybody with a Nigerian passport has bad experiences. She's allowing it define her leadership of the opposition because she's keen to throw Nigeria under the bus in order to appeal to a certain
now you see,
demographic.
that I think, Cheta, is the point. Because as you've said, if you go into a place with 100 Nigerians, 98, if not 99 of them have horrible experiences of being Nigerian. And and you'll probably find, like, in our generation, about 70% of them would have gone to boarding school. So we would have had, again, interesting experiences in those boarding schools. However, what again, and this is my problem with Kemi, she doesn't take cognizance of context. As at the time she would have gone to Shagamu, interestingly, those federal government colleges would have been better run than private boarding houses.
Yes.
So
Yes.
when she tells this story, because one, she's telling it, as you've identified, to people who are keen to say there's everything wrong with people from this community. They don't understand the context. They have, I mean, it's like when she talked about the insecurity growing up, and again she blew that out of the water. But then you suddenly realize, hang on, this woman lived how many meters away from Jordan Barracks when Buhari was president. There is no way, again, the kind of insecurity she claims to have seen in her estate or to her neighbors would have happened at that period to the level that she did. So my objection to this is it's not just a lack of preparedness. I think you hit the nail on the head in your last sentence. It's seeing an opportunity to climb the political ladder. She would rather climb over the bodies of Nigerians. And you see it. I'm sorry, maybe not to be maybe I want to be overly political, but it's almost a theme with the Conservative Party. A few of their rising talent, apart from, and I have to give kudos to people like Rishi, love him or hate him, at least he did not stand up somewhere and demean his heritage. Rishi Patel and what's her name, as unpleasant as they were, they
Tola
did not do
Braverman you're
this.
talking of.
Braverman, yes, as unpleasant, and they are genuinely unpleasant people, but as unpleasant
I
as they
don't
were.
think Rishi Sunak is an unpleasant person.
No, 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 I didn't say soon. I'm talking about
Yeah.
Braverman and Patel.
Patel and Braverman, yes, very
But
unpleasant
you
people.
will not see them try to climb over Kemi. Since so, my theory
So,
is
so
this.
again,
No,
okay, yeah, let's hear your theory, then I
my
will
theory is
explain what
this.
my thinking.
Farage offered up the boat and said, look, this is where I'm going to plant my flag. It's the boat, it's the migrant people are coming in. Everything seemed to have been taken up, and then Kemi sat back and said, you know what? I should offer up some sort of sacrifice on the altar of political expedience. Who's the closest I can offer up? Aha, Nigerians. Because again, we have a history, sadly, not just Nigerians, but the African heritage communities. We have a history of showing so much disinterest in politics and political conversation that whatever, it's easy for us to be used as fodder for anyone's advantage. And
So
Kemi
this
has
this
seen an
brings
opening.
me this brings me to one of the problems that we most Africans um I would exempt Botswana and to an extent Ghana from this, and possibly Kenya as well, and definitely or almost definitely South Africa. Now, most African countries are artificial constructs. And the argument that I will keep making, again, I'll refer to what I said earlier. I said that Kemi is the extreme manifestation of what is already existing. Now, for the most part, colonialism in Nigeria, let's take Nigeria and compare it with India. India was colonized for 300 to 400 years. It gave enough time for an identity to be formed around resisting the British because the British did divide and rule in India like they did in Nigeria. Now, another place where India, quote and unquote, won a lottery was that the country fell to pieces pretty much the day after the British left. And from those pieces emerged India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Look at the history between Pakistan and India as an example. Imagine if they were still the same country. In our own case, the various factions that were created by the British we fell apart in 66, 6 years after independence, and then we ended up back together. And what has happened is that our political elite, I mean, all you need to do is look at social media today, the whole Igbo versus Yoruba thing that keeps
Oh my
happening.
God. Is this disgusting?
Yeah. Now, so essentially, Nigeria is a country that nobody loves, really. Right now, if me and you as Igbo people, if we point out problems with Nigeria, that this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, we are likely to be attacked by people who will tell us that we're only hating on Nigeria simply because a Yoruba man is president. That's the likelihood. And then, one of the interesting things is you see a lot of Northerners, a lot of Arewa people also very unhappy with the way Nigeria is being run right now. Forgetting the fact that Buhari was president for 8 years before Tinubu was, and for the most part, they kept quiet. And I can assure you that if tomorrow Peter Obi becomes president, Peter Obi from our own neck of the country becomes president, and we are suddenly, for some reason, we begin to see some positivity and say, okay, let's give him a chance. You will find that Arewa and Yoruba people will be attacking us, saying that, oh, and they will be criticizing. So when you have that kind of hypocrisy, nobody loves the country. So it makes it easy. If Nigeria was a country that genuinely evoked love and pride. Kemi will think twice before doing what she's doing. I am not defending her. I think it's important to point that out. I'm just trying to explain that
So so
she's taking what she sees to be the easy route. And I think, for example, because I mean, look at the language that she's using in her public disavowal of Nigerian identity. She's actually saying, I identify as Yoruba, not as Nigerian. That thing is deep. And you have to be honest. I'm actually quite happy that she is not Igbo. Because it so happens, given the way politics is in Nigeria at the moment, Tinubu is Yoruba like she is. If she were Igbo, and she had been doing all of this, it would have had a very, very negative blowback back home. And
and
that's
and
for
and
me.
and I get that, and I get your argument. What I will also say is, I really don't think that a lack of love for Nigeria is influencing Kemi's decision. And this is Kemi loves has shown it's not just with Nigeria. It's just that perhaps she thinks she has found winning lottery. She loves to ruffle feathers again without much thought. So if everything is going right, she wants to be the one to come and just say no, everything is going. She wants to be that person who screams fire in a crowded theater for good or for ill. But I will also push back again on the perhaps my with my experience in politics here. So I think maybe one of the things that happened after uh 20 the October of 2020 when a lot of people left is people almost the veil sort of like fell away from a lot of people's eyes, such that those who are in Nigeria, you will see those who are arguing for a certain person or a certain type of politics. They are arguing because they've been pushed to the depths of the depths and they almost have nowhere to go. So for them, arguing for the status quo is survival. However, you see people here, and I take my election as a councillor, for instance. There were people who, for the first time in their adult lives, and these are people in their 30s, 40s, they voted. And they said, my goodness, for the first time, I feel my vote counts. And there are people who, one of the things that I will forever be grateful for them is that we did not let that manufactured, and I call it a manufactured difference in Nigerian politics of being Igbo or Yoruba, define um how we came together as a community here to say, you know what, let us try to start taking part in politics.
Yeah, the
So
reason it is easier for
yeah,
us
yeah,
to
yeah,
do that
I'm
here is
coming to
that
that.
we have a common,
Yes.
I don't want to use
So
the word enemy, so a common adversary.
aha. So what I'm getting at is when you come here and you see that, for lack of a better phrase, there's more to politics and where someone comes from, you're looking at who understands me and who can speak my language, then Kemi does not have any excuse because she's lived here all her life. She has
She
seen
hasn't
this.
lived here all her life. She spent her first 16 years in Nigeria.
Eh, eh,
And
eh,
I like, no, the reason I
So
brought that up is, no, the reason I brought that up is that she tweeted something a few days ago, about Britain not being a hotel for migrants. And
mm,
the very first reply to that tweet was from some blood and soul British person who
mm,
reminded her that her mother came essentially
yeah,
like a
yeah,
hotel,
I saw that
gave
response
birth to her,
and
and
took
then
her back.
left.
Mhm.
So essentially, what that encapsulated is what I've been saying. She's fighting a losing strategy, and it brings us way back to the points that I made, that she doesn't listen. So she's fighting a losing strategy, and instead of looking at what is happening, she's doubling down.
Yeah, but see, look, what I will say, if I don't know, I mean, you've already said she doesn't listen, so she's definitely going to listen. However, there are many members of parliament from African heritage communities. One of my favorite humans, Lawrence Shalom, who's also Nigeria Street, the UK trying to vote to Nigeria. There's Abena Opongasari, there's Adebayo Alaba, Helen Grant. There are people other than her who can trace their heritage to the continent of Africa who do not at any given point try to denigrate or offer up their ancestors on the altar of political gain. Perhaps this woman, if she has any moment of calm thought should learn from her colleagues.
Well,
Although,
in the current parliament, there are 22 African heritage MPs. And if you remember, was it 2 or 3 podcasts ago, I talked about Bim Afolabi,
mm.
who is like Kemi is in the Conservative Party.
No, but is Beam
He's,
still there? I don't think Beam is still there.
I think,
Oh no, no, no! I saw him once. Yes, yes, I saw
yeah,
him once
he's
in
still
Parliament.
there.
Yeah, yeah, he's still there.
Yeah,
He's
he's
still
still
there.
there. So he doesn't he doesn't, and unlike Kemi, he was actually brought up here. So he doesn't denigrates his Nigerian heritage. Again, and this kind of connects him to say a Rishi Sunak or Suella Braverman or
Mm.
Priti Patel, um, in the sense that they don't have bad experiences of their homeland, as it were. Kemi spent the first 16 years of her life in Nigeria, so she does have some bad experience,
You know,
some
but you know,
traumatic experiences.
some
I am
some
not
bad
trying to
experience.
defend.
Yeah, but you know
I'm just
some bad
trying to explain.
experiences. But some bad experiences can be passed down. And if there's
Yeah,
anyone, if
but you
no,
are
hang on,
more likely.
if there's anyone who has had a bad experience of Africa, it should be people like Sunak, whose family was forced out of Uganda,
Yeah, so
and so
Sunak, Sunak, great point that you brought, because where one of the places that I was going to is that Sunak does not talk about Tanzania or Kenya, where his
mm,
parents originated from.
yeah,
You hardly find Priti Patel talking about Uganda
Uganda, yeah,
or
pretty
Suella
spot on, yeah,
Braverman talking
yeah.
about Malawi. You understand? But when they talk about India, it's positive. One of the things that happens with most of us is human beings were wired to feel nostalgia. I can almost guarantee that despite Kemi, her kids will have a positive vibe of Nigeria. I can almost guarantee it. I won't go so far as to guarantee it. I won't bet my house on it, but I can almost guarantee it. It's something that human beings are wired for. We feel nostalgia. Think about it this way. Many people know the reason that they left Nigeria. Many people in our weave.
Mm.
But one thing that I have found in discussing Nigeria with many of those people is that those who came, so there are people like me who is still in Nigeria, literally. I'm in Nigeria pretty much half the year. And then there are people like, I wouldn't say you because I know that you've been to Nigeria probably twice since you moved, but there's some other people who have not stepped foot in Nigeria since they left. And when they talk about Nigeria, they seem to have there's this nostalgia,
It's
you know.
wasteful, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, that's the word you wistful. There's this wistful talk. So basically, I think it's a human thing. The further in time is the good memories that linger. You kind of suppress the bad memories. The interesting thing about Kemi Olagoke, Adegoke, is that when she first started out, she was reaching out to the Nigerian community and all of that.
I'm guessing
The
you've seen that letter as
higher,
well.
yeah, the higher she has gone, she has begun to weaponize her Nigerianness. It's a cynical and silly strategy, but we should recognize it for what it is. It is a strategy. Cynical,
And
yes.
that is
Silly,
what it is.
yes.
And here's the
But
thing.
when she went to Lagos last year, or was it early this year? I think it was early this year. So while there, she had it was warm words while she
Mhm.
was there. So again, strategy. Cynical, yes. Silly, yes. That reply on Twitter made it very clear that it was a losing strategy. But we should recognize that it is a strategy, nevertheless.
Yeah, and uh, I don't usually do Schadenfreude for politicians, but when she does, and she will lose her position as leader,
Of course
you
she
know,
will. Kemi
you
is
know,
not going to be prime minister. I think that one should be clear to anybody who
I
really
hope
observes.
I hope she sits back and enjoys shitting on the legacy of her ancestry. But
Well,
anyway,
what's likely to happen is that she will fade into oblivion.
mm, sweet Schadenfreude. Um, let's take a break. This human being has taken a lot longer than she should have. But when
For
we
you.
come, but when we come back, we'll talk about um the again. Sadly, it's Nigeria in the headlines.
Well, let's get back.
Welcome back to the Black Paper. My name is Noha.
And I'm Cheta Wanze.
Yeah, so it's interesting, Cheta. When we talked about this podcast, the idea was to talk about the experiences of African heritage communities with vis-a-vis UK politics. However, our sister and her people always, one way or the other, manage to draw us into talking about Nigeria specifically as a country. However, what I would like us to do is to talk about the global talent visa that was in the news a few years ago, and then look at it not just through the lens of what it means for Nigerians, even though uh, the country was mentioned specifically, but what it means for those in the community.
Yeah, there was an article in the Tory Graph, um, and I use that deliberately because people used to call it Tory Graph, although it's abandoning the Tory party.
What? No,
About
it's Storygraph. If you see what the job they do here in Derby, it's still the Storygraph.
I think it's becoming more of reformograph.
Yeah.
They they talked about the global talent visa, specifically the global talent visa for um, literature, music, and creative arts. And they the way the article was written made it seem like Nigerian authors and Nigerian creatives are flooding the UK fraudulently using that visa route. But when you so it's the article piqued my attention because I know quite a few people who came on that route, and some of them actually organized a play recently, Queen India in Covent Garden, which unfortunately I couldn't attend because my Labour Party councillor friend, who is also a creative, failed to inform me on time, so I was unable to.
Your Labour Party councillor friend who's on a global talent visa, who was part of the play as well. I wonder who on earth that
I didn't
is.
want to say that I was hoping that you would own up. This is, I can't even rely on having a friend in high places because you spectacularly failed to tell me on time. It was a mutual friend of ours who told me a few days to the event and tickets were sold out. So you have
I
you
apologize.
no, this apology is not enough.
No, I'll apologize like a proper brought up Nigerian. No, yes, that's what I'm saying. Like a proper
So
brought up Nigerian. I'll come with a bottle
so
of hot drink.
no, Ige Sekuluani. Let's start
Mhm.
with that. So, um, so anyway, the numbers bear some looking at. In 5 years, Nigerians have made, was it 729 applications, seconds to the US, and of these, 54 applications have been approved in 5 years, which would include you. And
In five
they are
years.
in 5 years, 54. So, which is an average of 11 a year,
11 a year.
thereabouts.
Yeah.
And they painted this like like a flood. And because I know I'm just in my head, and because I don't have permission to name names, I will only name one, Ondukwe Onuoha. But because I know Ondukwe Onuoha, and I've just counted another six that I know, these are all accomplished writers. And yet the reformograph is painting it like so let's call it out for what it is. This is racism because they did not for 1 second question the credentials of the Americans who have used that visa route to apply. And it brings us back to the whole Brexit thing. Now remember that when Brexit happened, one of the things that led the Brexit debate was racism. There was an anti-racist an anti-immigrant component to the whole argument. And then they ended up when the Eastern Europeans upped sticks and left after Brexit, they ended up with immigrants from Nigeria, from India, from Pakistan to fill those jobs that their people will not do. And they started giving out global talent visas. And again, you see, this is one of the things that when people have something in mind, people don't think of the law of unintended consequences often enough. Because it was clear when they said global talent visa, and we're not just talking of there are multiple categories of global talent visas. There's one for tech people, for example. Um, when they talk of those visas, in their heads, they are thinking of white people. Let's paraphrase Trump. We want immigrants from Norway. So we want immigrants, but it has to be the right kind of immigrants. So they are surprised when people, black people, apply for such visas, and they're doubly surprised when those black people clear the very steep hurdles
Mhm.
that those because
And it's not just having to prove that you have work
I know
worth
you want to bring the money on you. Don't
definitely
let's
no
no
because
no 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 no. Akorego, Akorego Aka. Just briefly, let's leave the money aside for a brief period. The hurdles, the requirements, before we start talking of the money, the requirements to get the visa are very steep.
Mhm.
Yes, you got it. The guys that I know got it. The guys that I know who got the tech visas. So many of these guys are accomplished. So the big
I
issue
know one of those tech people, and this is someone who
who has raised millions of dollars.
yeah, and who in his work has shaken the Nigerian foundation, the Nigerian
System.
government to its system to its
Yeah.
core,
I said,
just by
the people who
the
get
thing between his brains.
the people who get the basically people who get a visa called global talent visa. Like I'll repeat, I have seen the requirements. They are very steep. Yeah, people clear those hurdles, and then only for a choreograph to basically come and just paint all of them like they are.
But you know the interesting thing, when you look at the ranking, I've not found the ranking for the US, but China, for instance, has an 86% approval rate for technician. Russia has about 63%, India about 39%, Nigeria about 30%. So again, when you look at this, if there was a league table, how do you go to the last person on the league?
Again, racism. They can't believe. I mean, if you go back to the article itself, they were talking about Benokri. I
Yeah,
saying
I saw that and I thought, again, it's one of my biggest issues these days with so-called journalism. They talk about Benokri, they talk about Chimamanda. I'm like, are you people mad? Do you know who these people are? Do you know they're already far ahead? Why are you talking about them like they just got a visa
not
yesterday?
not just I see. There's a reason. Number one,
It
Chimamanda.
was a badly
Chimamanda
done
did
hard
not.
job.
Chimamanda is not did not do global talents. Let's
And
get
that's what I'm saying. But
that
if
out
you
of the
read
way.
the article,
She's yeah.
it
I
almost
mean,
reads like she did. And
yeah,
I'm like,
it's all
what are
it
they?
reads like she did. Chimamanda, they talked about Ben Okri, they talked about Chimamanda, they talked about Chino Achebe.
Chicho Achebe.
Now, Ben Okri was born in 1959, which means that he was a British citizen when he was born. And I think it's important to put that he was not up to two when he moved to the UK. Ben Okri moved to the UK before Nigeria became an independent country. So how did the name Ben Okri get into that article? Achebe published Things Fall Apart in the UK in 19 was it 58 or 54? Chino Achebe is late. He was born in 1930. So how did his name come into that? The Global Talent Visa is a creation of the Conservative Party. I think it was under Boris Johnson, but you can
Mhm.
fact check me on that.
So that
So
was
it's
it was Boris.
Chimamanda Adichie is America is her playground. She studied it. She schooled in America. Of course, she has visited the UK, but only to visit. She hasn't. She has a US passport. So
So
this
you
was
see,
a poorly executed hard job that screams racism. Because the bottom line of it is that the writers could not believe that they accomplished black people. End of
of
story.
course, some of the reactions I get sometimes when I say to people I'm a spoken word poet, are like, what? Like, anyway. But the thing is, the other interesting thing I noted in that article was because it spoke about unintended consequences. The one guy um that was mentioned is an MP called what was his name, Lee. 30p Lee. What's his first name? The reform guy.
Lee Anderson.
Lee Anderson. Now, it was quite interesting because he's reform, but here he is going on about Nigerians and the rest. Somehow, and this goes back to what I said earlier, in her consistent bringing up of Nigeria and Nigerians as her offering to this god of right wing politics, Kemi has then given someone like 30p Lee, who I don't know the last time he said something worth listening to, an opportunity to grab at some red meat and then just wave it around. And at the end of the day, if they then decide that Nigeria is going to be their next target, or Africans are going to be their next target, or whatever, Kemi does not have either the brain power or the staying power to go down that rabbit hole as these guys do. So she has offered them something that she cannot even sustain. And it's just quite interesting how somehow we've managed to see ourselves in the crosshair of reform.
Okay, a bit of here's my own thoughts. Right now, the people who are in the crosshair of reform and their fellow right wingers are Muslims generally. You see, I time again, as you know, I follow a lot of right wing media, watch their accounts and all of that because of the nature of what I do for a living.
Yeah.
So I follow a lot of extreme left and extreme right wing guys and a lot of centrists, of course. So the people right now squarely in their gun sights are Muslims. That's what they're facing right now.
Yeah.
But having said that, if they get to a point where they successfully drive away all the Muslims from the UK, we would probably be next in their sights. Um, a very quick story for our African listeners. 30p Lee Anderson is a member of parliament. The reason he's called 30p Lee is that sometime, I think it was in 2022, I'm not too sure of when, he claimed that people using food banks could make nutritious meals for about 30 pence a day if they knew how to budget and cook from scratch. That is a statistical impossibility, but it tells you basically the kind of mindset this guy has. That's a very out of touch mindset, but also very. So there was a very interesting video that I watched the other day from somebody called Jimmy the Giant, where
Ah.
he talked about the war on the poor. And he basically traced the history, and it's sort of like an elite struggle. The elites, the right wing elites. So 20 years ago, the people who were, and I lived in the UK because I studied in the UK in the mid 2000s. So I remember those things very clearly. When there was always talk about benefits scroungers, all of that stuff. That was the villain 20 years ago. Now the villain is the immigrants, especially the Muslim immigrants. So the media, there's a lot of right-leaning control, and it kind of I don't know, it kind of pains me to admit this because in my own personal politics, I lean conservative, but that's another story entirely.
Which is why
Um,
you keep tackling me, but carry on.
okay, for once you've managed to keep it quiet. Um, anyway, the point is the right wing leaning guys, many of who have a lot of influence over the media, tend to stay in power by creating a siege mentality. And the iron rule of creating a siege mentality is finding an enemy and making the generality of the population believe that all of their problems are caused by that enemy. Right now, it is Muslims, and you see it in. And so when you have, and this is not just Kemi now, even Kestama is guilty of that. When you have politicians who would otherwise be centrists trying to play to that, think of what is happening in the UK right now. It's almost as if people have forgotten that a year ago there were riots.
Mm-hmm.
They were very dangerous riots. And today I read that Rupert Lowe is going to bring was that lady who was sent to prison for incitement. He's going to bring her to Parliament as a guest. Lucy, I've forgotten her name. It so there is a problem with the politics of this place. That problem is not going to go away anytime soon. The least optimistic side of me says that it is going to get worse, a lot worse before it gets better. One of the things that I find very interesting is that the British right wing makes demands of what it expects of its country, without understanding that the UK does not have the strategic depth that the United States has. So they keep comparing themselves and keep expecting that they will be able to get away with things in the way America gets away with things, forgetting the fact that, see, if anything, America na God bastard picking. God loves that country. So they can do a lot of nonsense and get away with it. The UK can't. So the UK needs friends. It needs, as in proper friends, not this vassalized thing that is happening with the US currently. But hey, um,
You know, the interesting thing, because you gave some interesting bits about 30p Lee. This will tickle you, I suppose. You know, he started us out as a labor counselor.
yeah, I know, I know.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
2015.
you should know. I read all these people's history. So
2015, elected to Ashfield District Council, suspended in 2018 for vigilante justice, moved over to the Conservatives, now reformed in 2024. And but
he will move
he
over
has
to
just
that,
been
is it advance or whatever it's called.
no,
One
but he
thing
has
I
been
can
consistent in just being a menace.
Yeah, one thing I can almost guarantee is that reform will scatter,
Of
and
course.
then many of them will move over
Well,
to.
Rupert Lowe has already
Rupert Lowe has left.
has left,
Yeah,
and
he's
then
forming his own
so
vehicle.
one other
Zia
guy, I don't remember
Yusuf,
his name.
Zia Yusuf,
Oh no, he
Ben
left and
Habib,
then came back. No,
Ben
no,
Habib.
Zia Yusuf.
Sorry,
Sorry, that was yeah, sorry.
yeah, Ben Habib. The thing about these guys is they are bound together by a loathing of the other. That's
Yeah.
it. There's no other ideology behind. So when you start having things like serious conversations on the how, if you notice, even Nigel Farage is somehow trying to become more moderate in the language. That's the reason Rupert Lowe left,
Yeah.
because suddenly he can taste the possibility of power. And the most fundamental thing you don't want to do if you come into power, that's what Liz Truss failed to understand. The most fundamental thing you don't want to do is to scare the markets. So you have to tack towards the center.
Because that's where you win from.
That's where the economy survives from. The economy, ultimately, this is one lesson that our politicians have not learned in our homeland. The economy is the ultimate thing. We'll borrow from Bill Clinton. Is the economy stupid?
It's economy stupid, isn't it? But anyway, on that lovely note, Chita, shall we call it a
Yeah, we
day
shall.
on this? And I'll see you on the next one.
See you on the next one.